American Idol hopeful Freddie McClendon stood on the audition stage with his guitar, delivering an original song so heartfelt that it left superstar judge Carrie Underwood in tears. The 19-year-old from South Carolina wasn't just singing. He was pouring out a story of love and loss, one that resonated deeply with every judge in the room. By the time he strummed the final chord, the judges were in awe. In fact, country icon Luke Bryan even likened Freddie to a modern-day Paul Simon for his honest and poignant songwriting. This wasn't a typical audition. It was a cathartic tribute that turned a personal tragedy into a moving musical moment. A father's love and musical inspiration. Freddie's journey to this moment began with the unbreakable bond he shared with his father, Davis McClendon. According to family, the two were best friends who did everything together. Davis was Freddie's biggest fan from day one. He recognized his son's musical spark and nurtured it at every turn. One of their fondest memories was a trip to Nashville when Freddie was just 15. Standing on Broadway, Davis pointed out the neon-lit music venues and told his son, "You know, Freddie, that's gonna be you one day. You're gonna be that." Those words stuck with Freddie, giving him the confidence to chase his dream. With his dad cheering him on, the young singer-songwriter spent his high school years casually writing songs and learning guitar. But it wasn't until tragedy struck that music truly became his lifeline. Tragedy strikes. The loss of Davis McClendon. The McClendon family's world was shattered on May 7, 2023, when 46-year-old Davis never came home. In the early hours of that morning, his body was discovered next to his wrecked car on a roadside in Greenwood, South Carolina. At first, police suspected a hit-and-run accident, a random tragedy on a dark highway. But as the sun rose and investigators combed through the scene, signs of foul play began to emerge. The damage to Davis's vehicle and the scene didn't line up with a typical crash, and the family would soon learn that this was no accident at all. Their devoted father had been killed intentionally, the victim of a horrifying act of violence that would soon grab headlines statewide. A twisted investigation and national headlines. What initially looked like a mere accident quickly morphed into a complex true crime investigation worthy of a TV drama. Detectives noticed an odd clue. An oil trail dripped away from the crash site like breadcrumbs, leading them to suspect the killer's vehicle had been damaged. Following the trail, authorities were led straight to the home of William "Bud" Ackerman Jr., a name shockingly close to the family. Ackerman was the estranged husband of Davis's girlfriend, Meredith Haney, and jealousy was his deadly motive. Confronted by deputies, Ackerman's truck showed a cracked grille and leaking oil, evidence that he had used his vehicle as a weapon to pin and crush Davis in a deliberate hit-and-run murder. After a 7-day trial, a jury found Ackerman guilty of murdering Davis McClendon, and in October 2024, a judge sentenced him to 45 years in prison. The sensational nature of the case, a love triangle turned lethal, meant it couldn't stay local news. Before long, Davis McClendon's story was featured on national true crime platforms, including an episode of CBS's 48 Hours and coverage on Court TV and various podcasts. The father Freddie knew as a generous, loving man had been reduced to a headline, hit-and-run homicide, and the family was left to grapple with both grief and sudden media attention. Grief, media frenzy, and a song of healing for Freddie. Losing his dad was devastating enough, but the spotlight compounded it on the case. While you're already dealing with his death, you have to deal with all these people talking about the person that he was, when they didn't know him like we did. Freddie explained, describing the surreal experience of watching strangers discuss his father on the news. He hated that the world seemed fixated on how his father died rather than how he lived. To cope with the pain, the teen turned to the one thing that had always comforted him, music. To get those feelings out, he turned to writing songs. His mother noted, knowing it was the healthiest outlet for her son's grief. In the months after the murder, Freddie filled notebooks with lyrics and melodies, using music as therapy to process his emotions. He channeled his anger, love, and loss into an original song that would serve as a tribute to his dad's life. Everyone was just kind of focusing on his death, and I wanted to tell the story of his life, Freddie said of his mission. Rather than let his father be remembered only as a crime victim, Freddie wrote "You Never Loved Him" to celebrate the man behind the headlines. The supportive father, the friend, the hero he knew. In crafting the song, Freddie found purpose. He would take control of the narrative and keep his dad's legacy alive through music. You Never Loved Him, a heart-wrenching tribute. When Freddie finally stood before the idol judges, he carried more than a guitar. He carried the weight of his family's story. Strumming the first chords of You Never Loved Him, he immediately had the room silent and attentive. The song's lyrics unfolded like pages from the McClendon's diary, filled with raw heartache and personal truth. We never got to see him one last time. We never got to tell him goodbye, Freddie sang in a trembling voice, delivering each line to honor his dad's memory. We never got the chance to even try to warn him that you had lost your mind, he continued, a poignant reference to the unforgiving shock of his father's murder by an unhinged, estranged husband. Each word stabbed through the air, conveying the family's sorrow over the goodbyes they never got to say and their anger toward the man responsible. Freddie's performance was not polished pop. It was painfully honest and deeply human. His eyes welled up as he hit the chorus, his voice cracking slightly under the weight of emotion, yet he never faltered. In that audition room, time seemed to stop. The judges and crew watched, transfixed, as a young man turned unimaginable loss into a bittersweet melody. By the final note, there wasn't a dry eye left. Freddie had accomplished what he set out to do. He made everyone feel who his father truly was, beyond the tragedy. Judges' reactions and a golden ticket. For a moment after the song ended, the judges sat in stunned silence, absorbing what they had just heard. You've got a really honest approach to this thing, Luke Bryan managed, praising Freddie's authenticity. It's like our little modern-day Paul Simon. Longtime judge Lionel Richie was visibly moved, noting how Freddie translated that emotion, that feeling, to the point where you moved people. And that's what you're in this business to do. But perhaps the most emotional response came from Carrie Underwood herself. Wiping away tears, Carrie spoke directly from the heart. Thank you for bringing that and sharing your heart. It's so brave of you to decide that you want to choose the narrative, that you want to remember him, not what happened to him, she said, her voice catching with emotion. She commended Freddie for honoring his father's memory and showing strength through vulnerability. In that instant, it was clear that Freddie had achieved something far greater than a good audition. He had touched millions who would eventually hear his story. With the judges unanimously shouting yes, Freddie earned his golden ticket to Hollywood, confirming that his American Idol journey would continue. As his mother and sisters rushed in to embrace him, Freddie looked upward and whispered, "Dad, we're going to Hollywood." It was a triumphant and tender moment, a sign that Davis McClendon's spirit was right there with his son on that stage. Through tears and applause, the audition came to a close, but the impact of Freddie's performance was just beginning. In 8 minutes, he had managed to turn a tragic true crime tale into an inspiring story of hope, love, and resilience. And as viewers, we're reminded of the profound power of music, how a simple song, born from grief, can heal hearts and keep a loved one's legacy alive.